I never thought a single moment could tear your world apart so completely. It was the kind of day that starts like any other, quiet, ordinary, but ends with a silence so heavy it crushes your soul. My son was gone, taken from me on a cold street corner, far too young, far too suddenly. The pain was something I couldn't put into words. It wasn't just grief, it was betrayal wrapped in loss. Because while I was fighting to breathe through that unbearable pain, she, his mother, was somewhere else. At her ex's party, smiling and laughing, like the tragedy didn't even touch her. That's when I realized everything I thought I knew was a lie. My name is Daniel, and I want to tell you what it feels like when the person you trusted most in this world chooses someone else over you, over your family, even when you're falling apart. I want to tell you how love can break you, and how betrayal can feel like a second death. We started like any couple, two people in love with dreams bigger than the little town we lived in. I worked long hours as a mechanic. The work was hard, greasy, and exhausting, but it gave me pride. She worked at a boutique downtown, full of bright colors and smiling faces. We weren't perfect, but we had each other. And our son, he was the light that made everything worth it. I remember the first time I held him, how small and perfect he felt in my arms. He had her eyes sharp and curious, and my stubborn jaw. From that moment, I swore to protect him with everything I had. For a while, things were good. We made plans, joked about the future, and held on to the hope that love could get us through anything. But beneath the surface, something was changing. Something I didn't see until it was too late. She became distant. Calls went unanswered. Excuses piled up. And I told myself it was just stress, just the pressure of everything. But the truth was harder. The truth was that while I was working and dreaming and trying to hold us together, she was slipping away. I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to cling to the woman I loved, the mother of my son, the woman who once promised me forever. But forever wasn't what she had in mind. And so when my son died that day, it wasn't just his life that ended. It was the life I thought we shared. The moment I found out she was at that party, laughing with the man who once held her heart, was the moment I realized I was alone. This story isn't just about loss. It's about how love can turn to betrayal, how the people we trust the most can hurt us the deepest, and how sometimes, when the world falls apart, the only thing left is to fight back. When I think back to how our relationship started, I remember it was simple, almost effortless at first. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party. Her laugh was the first thing that caught my attention. It was bright and unrestrained, the kind of laugh that makes a room feel warmer. I was drawn to her like a moth to a flame, even though I knew better than to fall so fast. But sometimes, you don't get to choose. Our first few dates were filled with awkward smiles and shy touches, but soon it felt natural, like we had known each other forever. I admired her confidence in the way she carried herself. She had dreams that matched my own, a restless hunger for more than the small town we lived in. We talked about traveling, starting a family, and building a life together. Those early days were a whirlwind of emotion. We'd spend weekends walking along the river, sharing stories and hopes beneath the stars. I remember one night when she whispered that she'd never felt this way about anyone before. I believed her. I wanted to believe that we were building something real, something unbreakable. Soon enough, we moved in together. Our apartment was small and cluttered, but it was ours. I'd come home tired from work, and she'd be there with a smile, dinner waiting, and our son's laughter echoing down the hall. Those moments were my anchor, the reason I pushed through long days and sleepless nights. But cracks began to appear, subtle at first. She started staying out late, saying she was working late or meeting friends. I told myself it was harmless. She needed her space just like I did. But late nights turned into missed calls and unanswered texts. The warmth I once felt began to fade. Our arguments became more frequent, mostly about small things that spiraled out of control. I'd ask where she was. She'd snap back that I was being paranoid. She'd dismiss my concerns, telling me I didn't trust her. I hated feeling like I was losing her, but I didn't know how to stop it. There was a new man in her life, a name she mentioned once or twice but always brushed off when I asked. I wanted to believe it was nothing, just a friend or a coworker. But the way she avoided my questions, the way her phone lit up at odd hours with messages she quickly hid, it all planted seeds of doubt. Meanwhile, my best friend Mark noticed the change too. He was the kind of guy who could read me like an open book. One night, after I'd confided in him about the growing distance between us, he warned me not to ignore the signs. "You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved," he said quietly, and those words stayed with me longer than I expected. Our son Ethan became the silent witness to the tension. He was too young to understand the weight between us, but I saw how he'd look up at his mother with confusion, searching for the love that used to fill the room. I tried to shield him from the fights, but no child can escape the shadow of broken promises. One afternoon, I came home early from work and found the door unlocked. Inside, the apartment was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that feels heavy. I called her name, but there was no answer. Then I noticed her phone on the kitchen counter, her screen lit up with a message from that man I barely knew. I stared at the words, a cold pit forming in my stomach. It wasn't just texts. There were photos, hers and his, close and smiling, the kind of pictures that tell a story no one should have to see. That day, the illusion shattered. I realized I wasn't just losing her. I was losing everything we built. The woman I loved, the mother of my son, was slipping away, and I was powerless to stop it. Mark stood by me through it all. He was my rock when I felt like I had none. He helped me stay grounded, reminding me to think clearly, even when my heart screamed to do otherwise. Without him, I don't know if I would have survived those dark months. As the days passed, the distance between us grew wider. Our conversations became strained, forced, like actors trying to keep up a facade. I asked her directly once if she was seeing someone else. She denied it, her eyes cold and distant. That was the moment I knew the truth was deeper than I wanted to admit. The tension wasn't just in our home. It spilled into every part of my life. At work, I was distracted, my hands trembling under the hood of the cars I fixed. I stopped sleeping, the weight of betrayal and uncertainty crushing me. I tried to hold on for Ethan's sake, hoping that love could still heal the cracks. But every lie, every secret she kept, chipped away at the foundation of what we were. Looking back now, I can see the signs clearly. The late nights, the hidden phone, the excuses that didn't add up. But when you're in the middle of it, blinded by love and hope, those signs are easy to ignore until it's too late. That's when the real heartbreak began. Not just losing my son, but losing the family I thought we had. The day I found out felt like time itself stopped moving. I was shattered in a way I never imagined possible, caught in a storm of grief and betrayal that left me gasping for air. It wasn't just the loss of my son that tore me apart. It was the realization that the woman I trusted most was living a lie right in front of me. It started with a phone call I never wanted to get, a voice unfamiliar but grave, telling me Ethan had been caught in a fight on the street. They said he was hurt badly, that I needed to get to the hospital immediately. My heart sank and shattered all at once. I raced there, every second a lifetime, every breath a desperate plea for him to be okay. But when I got there, they told me there was nothing more to be done. My son was gone. They said it was a senseless act, some random violence, some cruel twist of fate. I stood frozen, numb, my world collapsing into an endless void. But that wasn't the worst part. Hours later, when the chaos should have stopped, my phone buzzed. It was a message from a friend, a photo, a video, something I wish I had never seen. It showed her, the woman who was supposed to be my partner, my family, laughing, drinking, surrounded by people at a party. And not just any party, it was at her ex's place. The man she had once said was out of her life, the man I had trusted she had left behind. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling, my breath catching in my throat. How could she be there? How could she be living this carefree, like nothing had happened? Like my son's death was just some distant tragedy, irrelevant to her world. Anger flared inside me, sharp and burning, mixing with the unbearable grief. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was cruelty. How could she choose to be there, surrounded by old flames and old memories, while I was bearing the only thing that truly mattered? I confronted her that night. I don't even remember the words I said. Broken, raw, desperate. But I remember her face. Cold, distant, unapologetic. She told me she needed to move on, that holding on to the past wasn't healthy. That night she made it clear I was alone in my pain. I remember sitting on the floor of that empty apartment afterward, the silence pressing down like a weight. The absence of my son was unbearable, but the absence of the woman I loved, her love, her support, was a wound that cut even deeper. Days turned into weeks, and the image of her at that party haunted me relentlessly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her smiling with him and heard the laughter that wasn't mine to share anymore. The betrayal gnawed at me, eating away any hope I had left. That's when I realized this wasn't just about loss. It was about justice, about making sure she felt the weight of what she had done. I wasn't going to let this betrayal define me, but I wasn't going to forget either. I made a silent vow that night, not just for my son, but for myself. I would find a way to reclaim my dignity, to show her that betrayal has consequences. The road ahead would be painful, and I wasn't sure where it would lead. But I knew one thing. I wasn't finished fighting. In the wake of everything, the death of my son, the cold betrayal, I felt like I was drifting in a dark void. The pain was overwhelming, but beneath it simmered something else. A fierce, burning need for justice. I wasn't sure if I called it revenge or simply reclaiming my sense of self, but I knew I couldn't stay broken forever. At first, the idea of revenge felt like a distant, dangerous thought, something reckless that might consume me whole. I wrestled with it, turning it over in my mind during sleepless nights, questioning if it was worth it. Could I really become the person who hurt her back? Was that who I wanted to be? But each time I closed my eyes, the image of her laughing at that party, surrounded by people who didn't know or care about the wreckage she left behind, pushed me forward. I realized that doing nothing felt worse. I had to act, not out of spite alone, but to regain control of my shattered life. The first step was gathering information. I started quietly, observing her patterns without revealing my knowledge. I needed to understand who she was now, who this woman was beyond the mask she wore in front of me. The more I learned, the clearer the path became. I reached out to Mark, my best friend, who had been my anchor through everything. He reminded me to stay grounded, to avoid letting anger blind me. Together, we made plans, careful, calculated steps that wouldn't burn bridges or leave me vulnerable. This wasn't about rash decisions. It was about thoughtful moves that would have lasting impact. I spent hours replaying every moment we shared, searching for the cracks I'd missed. It wasn't just about her betrayal. It was about everything she had taken from me. My trust, my family, my future. I wanted to show her what that loss felt like. Sometimes I found myself torn between bitterness and sorrow. There were nights when I just wanted to give up, to let the pain swallow me whole. But those were the nights I reminded myself of Ethan, his innocent smile, the dreams I still held for a life beyond this heartbreak. My plan took shape slowly. It wasn't about destruction. It was about exposure and accountability. I wanted her to face the truth she buried beneath lies. I wanted her to realize the damage she caused and feel the weight of it, not through empty words, but through undeniable reality. Part of me feared what I was becoming. Revenge isn't a clean path. It's messy and dark, and it can blur the line between right and wrong. But I clung to the hope that I could walk that line carefully, without losing myself completely. Every detail mattered. I mapped out times, places, people who could help or witness the truth. I reached out to friends she had confided in, people she trusted, gathering pieces of the puzzle she thought she hid. Each new fact fueled my determination. As the days passed, I felt a shift inside me. The helplessness that had consumed me started to loosen its grip. I was no longer just a broken man drowning in grief. I was someone with a purpose, someone ready to reclaim his life on his own terms. Still, the tension built constantly beneath the surface. I knew the confrontation would be intense, possibly painful, but I also knew it was necessary. It was the moment where everything would come to light, where I could finally say everything left unsaid. And yet, even as I prepared, part of me hoped she would understand. that maybe, somewhere beneath her own walls, she still felt regret. But I braced myself for the worst, ready for whatever would come. This was no longer just about revenge. It was about healing, about finding the strength to face the past and move forward. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to walk it, step by step, until I found the closure I so desperately needed. The night I confronted her, everything felt charged, like the air itself was holding its breath. Months of pain, planning, and silent fury had led to this moment, and there was no turning back. I wasn't the broken man from before. I was someone who had spent every waking hour preparing for this exact confrontation. I chose the place carefully. Neutral ground, a quiet cafe where the hum of life would keep our voices from echoing like accusations. But the intimacy would force honesty. When she arrived, she looked the same on the surface, calm and distant. But I saw something else. Unease, maybe guilt, or maybe just the flicker of recognition that I wasn't the man she thought I was. I didn't waste words. I pulled out the photos, the messages, everything I had collected, proof of her betrayal, her callous disregard for the life we shared, and the son we lost. I saw her face shift from indifference to shock, then defensiveness. But I was beyond needing her excuses. "Do you even realize what you did?" I asked quietly, voice steady but thick with all the pain I'd held inside. "Not just losing him to the streets, but where you chose to be after. How you smiled and laughed like it was nothing." Her eyes flared with something, shame, anger. I couldn't tell. She tried to explain, but I cut her off. This wasn't about justification. It was about facing the damage. For a moment, we just sat there, the weight of everything hanging between us like a suffocating cloud. I could see the cracks in her carefully built walls, and it felt like the first time she truly understood the depth of the destruction she caused. Then I told her what my plan was, not to destroy her, but to hold her accountable, to make sure the people around her knew the truth, the real story behind the mask she wore. I wanted her to feel the sting of isolation, the way I had felt abandoned in my darkest hours. She looked away, silent, as if finally realizing that no amount of charm or lies could undo what was broken. But then something unexpected happened. She broke down, not in anger, but in sorrow. For the first time, she admitted her mistakes, the selfishness that blinded her. She said she hadn't known how to cope, how to face the grief, and instead ran from it in the worst way possible. It was a painful admission, but also a relief. It didn't erase the betrayal or the hurt, but it humanized her in a way that surprised me. I realized then that this confrontation wasn't just about revenge. It was about truth, about exposing the pain on both sides. It was about making space for healing, even if it meant walking away. I told her I wasn't here to destroy her, but to reclaim my life, and that included letting go of the anger that nearly consumed me. As I walked away from that cafe, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and liberation. The confrontation was over, but something inside me had shifted forever. I wasn't the same person who had lost a son and been betrayed. I was someone who had faced the darkness and come out the other side. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to take it. Not because I had won or lost, but because I had taken back control of my story. In the quiet that followed, I found myself alone with my thoughts. No anger, no plans, just the raw truth of what had happened. The revenge I once craved had shifted into something far more complex. It wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about understanding and acceptance. I realized that betrayal, as brutal as it is, often springs from brokenness, fear, and desperate attempts to escape pain. She wasn't a villain in a story written just to hurt me. She was a flawed human, struggling in ways I couldn't fully grasp until I stood in her place, facing my own grief and loss. Losing my son changed everything. It shattered my world, but it also forced me to look beyond the surface of love and betrayal. Love is messy, imperfect, and sometimes painfully selfish. But it's also the force that pushes us to heal, to grow, and to rebuild what seems irreparably broken. I spent months rebuilding my life from the ashes, learning to forgive, not for her sake, but for my own peace. I sought therapy, leaned on friends, and slowly rediscovered the parts of me I thought were gone forever. I even started volunteering at a local support group for grieving parents. Helping others reminded me that life, no matter how fragile, is worth fighting for. Looking back, I understood that revenge, while tempting, rarely offers true closure. It's a fleeting victory that can chain you to the past. The real triumph comes from reclaiming your own happiness and refusing to let betrayal define your future. I don't know if she ever fully understood the damage she caused. Maybe she will someday. But it no longer matters. I've made peace with the past, and that peace is what's most important now. This story, my story, is a testament to the resilience of the human heart. It's a reminder that even when love breaks us, it can also teach us how to stand again. Betrayal wounds deeply, but it doesn't have to silence us or steal our hope. In the end, I'm not just the man who lost his son or the man who was betrayed. I'm someone who chose to rise, to heal, and to live beyond the shadows of pain. That is the truth I want to leave behind. For anyone listening who's ever felt broken or betrayed, you are not alone. Your story isn't over. And sometimes the hardest endings are just the beginnings of something new. For support, do like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.